All right, we're going to talk a little bit first about the Audacity interface. If you've already used Audacity, then you can skip this and go on to the next video. So we're going to start from the top left, and depending on what screen resolution you have, the organization of some of the controls might look a little bit different, but they'll all be there. So let's start with the top left. The first thing we have are what they call transport controls. And that dates back to the old days of reel-to-reel tape recorders, when they actually transported physical audio tape. And the names have stuck and the symbols have stuck too. So let's start with the top left. We have pause. And if you notice, when I hover my mouse over it, it tells me what it is, and it also tells me the keyboard equivalent. So instead of having to go up there and click on the pause button, I could just hit the letter P on my keyboard and it would do the same thing. We have play, and that's the space bar, and that's kind of a universal thing. Most audio software, whether it be a digital audio workstation, even music notation, when you want to play back something, it's the space bar. Then we have stop. This takes us back to the beginning, and this goes to the end, and then we have record. So that's our transport controls. Next, here we have sort of a tool palette. In the upper left, we have the selection tool, which is the tool you're going to use most of the time. Here we have the envelope tool, where we can change amplitude of certain sections. We have a draw tool, where we actually draw in certain things when you really want to zoom in. Speaking of zoom, that's the zoom tool. Here we have the time shift tool, and here we have the multi-tool, which I rarely ever use. Next, we have our input level, and that's signified by the microphone. Next to it, we have our output level. So when we're playing back something, and you'll see when I play this back, you'll see some levels here. Notice that the loudest is 0, and then it goes into negative numbers. That is the dBFS, or the decibel full scale. Here we have our record levels. So right now I have this set to go through my interface, so I can't change it. Here's our playback volume, which I can move. And it goes from 1 down to 0. Next door I have some editing tools. So hopefully these are somewhat obvious. Cut, copy, paste. This one is to trim the outside selection. So if I select some audio and I click on this one, it will delete everything before and after my selection. So if I click on that, that's what that does. Here's the undo. This one does just the opposite. It will delete what I have selected and create silence. Here we have some zoom tools. Here we zoom in, zoom out. This one will fit the selection to the width. So here I have selected part of the audio. If I click on this, it will then stretch that out so that it fits in the whole window. This next one will fit the project, so it'll take everything and fit that into it. And here we have the zoom toggle back and forth, so I can go back between two different views. Let's go to full width again. And last but not least, this is the playback speed. So that's the top left. The only other things to be aware of, first is on the left of any audio file. Here's the name of the audio track, and it has a little sub-menu. So I can change the way the waveform is viewed. I can change the wave color. Here's where I can change the format, which we'll talk when we get into digital audio. We'll talk more about that. Same thing with this. So here's, if I change the wave color there, now it's a sort of pinkish. I'm going to go back to 1. There we have it. That's how you change the size of a window. You move it down there. Here we have mute and solo. Here we can change the gain, or the volume of a particular track. Here's where I can change it, what's called the panning, going left to right, if it was in stereo. And here, if I click on this, it will then make it as small as possible. And the last one, this will obviously close the track. We have our mute and solo, which hopefully are pretty straightforward. Mute, obviously we'll turn it off. Solo, if I have multiple tracks, it will mute everything else and solo this track. Last part of the interface is the bottom part. Down here we have the project rate. Notice that it's in hertz. This is not really the frequency. We're talking about digital audio. This is turns on snap when I select something. I typically leave that off. And this determines if I select something. Let me select it here. And so here's the start of the selection. Here's how long it is. And I can change these. There's an arrow next to here. I can do it in seconds, hours, minutes, and seconds, days, hours, minutes, and seconds, so on and so forth. I have this at hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. And we can, if we're doing, we can do, these are digital samples. It also does frames, film frames. So I have it hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, or thousandths of a second. So here's the start and the length. I can also change, I can do the start and the end, the length and the end, so on and so forth. I usually like to do the start and the length. And this tells me where I am when I'm playing something. So if I, let's say, click around 4 seconds, you can see this is 4.007 seconds. We can also do the same types of things on that meter. And that's the interface of Audacity.